Hello, welcome to another episode of Get Real and Own Person podcast. I'm Meaghan Garzon, and today I'm very excited to have Bob Kocis on to chat. He is a former colleague, mentor, I would say, and we've kept in touch over the years. He is an experienced sales leader and recently was president and COO of a tech company. But I'll have you introduce yourself, Bob. Tell everyone what you do and what you are going to focus on today in terms of building trust.
Well, thank you, Megan. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on today. It's really
Right.
awesome to get to spend some time with you and with the viewers. Um, so Bob Kocis, I've been in tech sales and tech leadership for the last 25 plus years. I recently retired a few weeks ago.
Congrats.
Thank you very much. I published a book December 10th called The
Yes.
President's Club Mindset, and I'm going to be spending some time doing a little bit of board work and doing a little bit of work on the book and doing some speaking engagements. And, really appreciate the time today.
Awesome. So many big things happening in your life right now. I've been following the success of your book thus far, the President's Club Mindset, just invaluable advice. I know you personally, so I can only imagine how helpful it is to anyone reading it. But we'll get into more of kind of like how you got to that point of actually writing a book.
Okay.
I want to kind of peel back the layers.
Sure.
And why I really wanted you on to tell your story is because I've always admired your empathy and just the way you lead with genuine emotional intelligence and mentorship. And I think that really stands out in
Thank you.
especially the corporate world today and just the world we live in as just a human element. And so today it kind of ties into the topic of what execs typically misunderstand about trust. And so what would you say is the real playbook for influence and credibility, right? So just to jump into the first question, when you hear, trust in leadership, it's unfortunately a buzzword nowadays,
Uh-huh.
but what do most executives think it means and what do you actually think it means?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. I'll start off by saying that, trust has to be earned. It really can't be bought, or it can't be you can't take shortcuts to it. You have to earn it. And sometimes it takes a little bit of work to earn it. But, if you're able to earn it and maintain it, it can it can really carry you in your career in a very positive way. And but it does take that work. And then, it's interesting. I went to college at a place called the United States Merchant Marine Academy, and we used to have a saying there called "acta non verba," which is deeds, not words.
Mm,
And it always reminds me of trust in a way, because it's about your actions. It's about what you do, the deeds you do, like how you conduct
mm,
yourself. You can talk the talk, but you have to have the actions, right, to really
right.
establish and earn trust.
Yeah, to follow through and actually, do what you say you're going to do, and actions speak louder than words. So,
Yeah.
yeah, would you say that is how you've kind of built your career and your leadership style?
Yeah.
And you
Not
know,
always. Not
no,
always. No, in my early days, I was talking about this, in my early days, Megan, I was probably overly self-centered,
really,
in my career, yep, and, I was always kinda concerned about, "Hey, why am I not getting promoted, or why am I not getting pay raises, or why am I not getting this, or why am I not getting that?" And there was a point in time that came where I realized I was kinda doing it wrong, and I think I was at that point, I had made it to like a VP of sales for a small team. I was out in the West Coast, and
hmm
things weren't going well, wasn't making the number. I had people resigning on me, like things weren't happening. And what I realized at that moment is that I had to put all my energy and focus into my team and my customers to make
mm,
them successful, and stop worrying about myself. And when I
yeah,
made that mindset shift, when I made that change, is when my career took off, because I was able to just put all my energy into making my team successful and making my customers successful. And that was really the moment for me that kind of changed it.
that is really interesting, and I love. The vulnerability there because I think a lot of people, especially earlier in your career, you think, I'm working so hard. I'm great at what I do. Why is this not clicking? And that takes a lot of maturity to step back and realize that it's not just you. And, to ensure the success of the team and the customers, it's just so much more collaborative. And then people are behind you. It's kind of like playing more of the long game because you're building relationships, right?
Totally. It's actually a lot more fun too. It's a
Yeah.
lot more fun to do it that way because you're lifting up everybody, right? You're focused on lifting up people around you, regardless of who they are, and that just makes life more fun in general. So I think that's a component of it that's really important.
Yeah. And then, I mean, some folks that manage teams and are maybe on the newer side of leadership think, people will trust and do really well and be committed if they like me. But I want to differentiate between being liked and being trusted. How
Right.
would you
Well,
describe that?
there's a difference. There's a difference, and I'll describe it for you guys. I think I think people do tend, a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of leaders do tend to want to be liked, right? And then it's difficult sometimes to deliver difficult news. It's sometimes you blur the line between being a leader and being a friend to somebody, and sometimes those lines do get blurred. But you always have to maintain, um, I had a leader in my life. I'm going to relate it back to somebody. I had a leader in my life where he led in such a way that for me, behaviorally, I was more worried about letting him down than I was, making sure I did what he said. I didn't want to disappoint him,
Oh,
right? So because he was a strong leader, because I trusted him, because he always delivered on what he told me he was going to do, the emotion I had was more of, I don't want to let this individual down. I want to do everything I can to make sure they're successful and we as a team were successful. So I think some leaders, many leaders that lead that way, they create that kind of culture where the team doesn't want to let them down. They want to go strive for the best. And then they have enough separation to understand that there is time and place where you have to be coached and you have to deliver good news or bad news. And good leaders, great leaders can really make that shift happen where they're able to do both.
yeah. No, that's an amazing point. And, um, I think that it's kind of like mutual respect too when there's that respect for whoever's leading you, and you, like you said, you don't want to let them down, and it's a different type of drive. It's for the team, it's for the better good of the company or whatever you're working on. And so with that example or anyone else you've experienced that has that quality, what are maybe like 2 to 3 things that stand out that would make other people feel that way and want to work that way for the team leader?
No, it's a good point. So I think the first one is, and you mentioned this early on, is empathy. So really understanding, like, when you're leading a team and you need to establish trust, really understanding like the personal why for individuals, what
Mhm.
motivates them, what's going on, in their world. And then I think the thing about that I see missed, right, is what I call people don't put their head where their feet are. So they're not focused on the moment. They're on their phone, they're
Yep.
texting. I was delivering a keynote last week and I told this story about a manager that was doing a one-on-one with a salesperson, and they were texting and talking on their phone while they're doing this one-on-one, and I felt so bad for the employee because I was watching, it was a Starbucks and I'm watching it like transpire because they weren't in the moment. They weren't really
Yeah.
taking interest in what's going on. They weren't being curious, right?
Yeah.
And because of that, you really can't establish empathy because you can't really put yourself in that person's shoes, right? So
Yeah.
that it all kind of intertwines. So I think that's really, really critical is being in the moment, keeping your head where your feet are, being present, being curious, and then allowing empathy to develop naturally as you have those discussions, with people on your team.
That's just a great life skill too. I mean, like in this conversation, it's like we're listening to each other. We're here.
Right.
And I've been probably guilty of it too, where there's so much in my mind and I'm thinking of the next thing and like writing a note down or texting or whatever. But I've been really trying, especially having a young child now, it's taught me to be so much more present and in the moment. And I think, in especially corporate and tech environments and sales teams in particular, there's a lot of pressure and it's fast paced and, pressure to hit the numbers and to be ahead of the competition. So I think that's a really good reminder that you're not going to actually get ahead if you don't have that relationship aspect and that empathy.
Yeah. Right.
Um, and so for someone that's in kind of that intense period in their career, and may feel like overwhelmed and easily distracted by all the work, what are some tips, maybe like things to pull from your book or anything else you typically share that could be helpful to in order to be more present and be more responsive on a human level?
Yeah, I think one is understand that everybody's going through something, whatever it is. They might be having a good day, they might be having a bad day, they might be going through something personally or professionally that you really may not be aware of or probably aren't aware of. So
Hmm.
just try not to judge based upon reaction of individuals. Um, you can call me today and I'd be very receptive to what we're talking about, and you can call me tomorrow and I could have something that's going on in my life that I'm not going to be receptive. And it may not, it's not personal, it just happens. So you just got to kind of make sure you don't read into those things too much. I think people do. They get upset, they read into things, this person isn't being responsive or whatever reason, and it's not really not the case, right? It's just everybody's going through different things that they're struggling through or going through in their world that you got to be aware of. I think the second thing is really, you can't pretend to care. Okay, you just
Yeah.
can't. People
Oh,
can
yeah.
see that, right? So
Totally.
you just need to be all in. Like when you're meeting with your team, you're meeting with your people, you need to care about what's going on in their world, right? And they can sense that a mile away, right?
Yeah.
I think it's that's an important part of it is you gotta do that. And I think the reason why you want to care, is also important because those folks are working for you. They have a career they want to build. They have personal goals they want to achieve. And as a leader, you want to help them try to achieve as much of that as possible, right? Through coaching and creating new opportunities for them, all these different things. So I think those things are important as well. And then the final thing I would just say is maintain a calm environment.
Hmm.
Don't get too worked up. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. Keep things even keel. Stay calm, in
Hmm.
the heated moments. And then your team will sense that. If you can always see a team that's really on a roller coaster, emotionally.
Hmm.
Typically the leader will be on a roller coaster emotionally. They'll be very high,
I
very low.
agree.
But teams that consistently perform, that consistently get things done, you'll see their leader be very consistent and emotionally present in how they operate.
Yes. Very, very good points. And I've experienced that where I've been on teams and it was very hectic and very high stress. And it's, doing marketing, it's not life or death. And
Right. Yeah.
it really is dependent on how the leader conducts themselves and composes themselves, and staying centered and grounded is something I've been personally working on, and I really respect that in folks. And the second thing you said about you can't pretend to care, that's huge. And I think like with you, clearly you genuinely care and you put in that effort and it shows, and that's when it works, is when it's real. And it's so interesting because it relates directly to what I try to work on with my clients and with own person, to create leadership communications and a personal brand and social presence that is real. It's authentic. It's not this fake persona built on ego of what you should be saying. So I can just totally relate to that. And that's kind of the mission of how I try to help folks with their content. But just to build off of that, when people in leadership or the C-suite or whatever it is, are trying to enhance their communication or lead with certain verbiage, like is there anything that you think just does not work and that people can see through? Is there anything that you noticed that is like a definite no-no when it comes to that?
Yeah, I do. I think, you know, when people could tell if you're not being genuine, right? And if you're not actually, hitting on the points that people care about. One a good example of it is that a lot of companies and leadership will take surveys, ask people to fill out surveys, ask for feedback. They'll do roundtables. They'll bring people together and ask for candid feedback. And then that feedback actually doesn't go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's not used. It doesn't go anywhere. So I think if you're creating an environment for your employees or your team, whoever it might be, that you want to establish trust, you want to establish good open communication, you have to take, the input, seriously. Now, you're leading the team or the company in a certain direction. You may not be able to take everything they say, but there is going to be good things that come out of that that can weave into your strategy. If you
Mhm.
actually, and employees are, if you talk to employees that are heard, right? They're very proud when their ideas and their comments or their suggestions actually make it into the company strategy. That's very
Mhm.
because a lot of these folks are individual contributors that are incredibly great performers, but they want to be individual contributors for their entire career, right? They don't have a desire to be in leadership. So that ability to build that environment where they can help, craft, where the company is going, where the team is going long term and be part of that strategy is really important. Most adults, most professionals just don't want to be told everything. They want to be part of the decision making in a
Mhm.
way. I think that's important. Having an open environment is really critical.
Yeah, it's huge when a company actually allows for that and empowers folks to have their voice heard and collaborate in a way that really makes an impact, and they can see that, "Oh, that actually came from my idea, and that was listened to, I was heard." And I think, again, like, when I see content that lands, it's because the content creator is understanding what their audience, what matters to them, what will resonate with them, and what they want to hear from someone like them. So the same goes with employees and teams, because I think, like you said, we're not just lemmings following the one
Right.
leader. We're all people working together. It's very
And just to tie on that real quick, the leaders that I see that micromanage their employees deeply and want to steer every single decision, they're the ones that have fragile teams and teams that don't perform very well. And the leaders that can allow their team to maximize their potential and drive things on their own. And by the way, they may not be exactly the way you would do it. That's
yeah,
okay. You have to be confident enough and strong enough to let go of that. You'd be like, it's
yes.
okay if they're not doing it exactly the way I'm doing it, as long as the end result is the same or very close to the same. You're going to be in a much better spot if you allow the team to function that way.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. And it shows that you kind of need an openness and flexibility in
Yeah.
your style. And if that is not your personality, then like you said, your team probably will not be as strong.
Right.
So I'm just wondering if, I mean, I think you're just naturally kind of like that, but I'm wondering, like, earlier in your career, was there a time when you realized, like, oh, I'm, controlling this too much. I need to let people kind of experiment more. Was there a moment that opened you up to that?
Oh, for sure. I think, when I got my first kind of C-level position, when I was at a company called Ansys, I realized that I couldn't probably, micromanage and steer everything the way that I once did and get the same result. The team was just too big. And you have to start to realize that there's a lot of good things. If you're coaching properly and you're developing your team properly and creating a team environment and creating a culture of innovation and a culture where people can thrive. If you're doing those things, you have to trust that when you're not there, your team is getting great things done, right? And
Mhm.
I think that's the mark of what I call a great leader or a trusted leader
Hmm.
is that they have confidence that when they're not watching, great things are happening,
Oh, I love that.
right? And yeah, I always tell people, even if we relate back to sales for a second or even some other functions, service delivery, it's not about the deal that you help close or the project you help implement. It's about the ones that get done when you're not there.
Oh, yes.
That's the ones. That's the
Because
ones that
you
actually
set
matter.
it up.
You set it up. You hired the people, you put the structure in place, you helped build the processes, you trained them, you did all this work, you created this culture. They're doing it without you. That's the mark of success. That's when you know you've arrived.
Ooh, I love it because that's fulfilling as a
It
leader
is.
and coach, and
Really
I
is.
kind of relate to that as a parent because it's like you teach your and you're a parent as well, so you teach your
Absolutely.
kids,
Yeah.
you see them actually doing that on their own, and it's kind of, I can kind of relate to that in that way.
Yeah, we just add one more thing. It can also be threatening to certain leaders
Okay.
because they feel a little bit like I'm not involved anymore. You have to just have confidence in yourself that that's part of the journey, right?
Yeah, do you think that if people are more removed, th and there's a lack of confidence, um, it just won't work? Like, do you think that's why people micromanage is because there's that lack of confidence?
I think they get worried because, there's visibility that they may not have been involved. So their whole career, they have been involved in
Yeah,
the
the
delivery,
visibility.
the visibility, right? Now all of a sudden, they need to let other people take the visibility. And there is some anxiety around that, which is totally natural, by the way. You
Yeah.
know, so you have to have confidence in yourself and your team to do that. But, I think once you get over that hurdle, it's much more fulfilling.
Mhm. And so this topic is kind of covering credibility as well, right? So that
It
kind
is.
of ties into how do you define credibility? Because it's not just always you're getting recognition because you did something, you were involved, but like we were saying, you can build something and then kind of like the fruits of your labor come after the fact.
Right.
So yeah, do you want to speak to how you would define credibility in that sense?
Yeah, I think you summed up really well, but I also would liken it to, a bit of a currency, like it inside an organization, credibility is a bit of a currency. So,
Mm.
if you have the ability to if people know you're gonna deliver, you tend to get the tougher projects, you tend to get the tougher assignments, you tend to get, asked to fix things. You start to develop this sense of, hey, this person is not only incredibly trustworthy, but they have high credibility and we know they're gonna deliver, right? Um, so I think that's a bit of how, I would probably sum that up, you know.
Mhm. Right, and then so strong that's the definition of how a team can kind of remain strong, but things ebb and flow in companies and like you said, people have good days and bad. So in times when maybe you've led a team that was maybe struggling for a time and then you had to shift, how did you do that while maintaining that trust and credibility in like the harder moments where
Yeah,
things weren't
no,
always smooth?
that's a great question. So I think first thing is I said this earlier, but first thing is just to remain calm. The
Yes.
second thing is don't change how you're acting, you know. So dig into really what the root cause was of the problem, make sure your team understands what the root cause is, and then take decisive action, with your team and make sure they understand it and then communicate really well. So I think those are the steps that I would kind of, outline. But I think really understanding the root cause, working with your team to come up with the solution so they buy into it. So you're not just, barking at them. And then allowing them to, implement and then driving it from there, I think is how I would frame it up.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense, and it seems like those tips show that you kind of like one thing you said is don't change how you act. So it's like you are grounded and anchored in who you are as a person and a leader. So I think maybe that's the initial step is you're able to remain calm and centered because you are confident or sure and certain about how you want to be and how you
Mhm.
want to lead, right? So did that build over time for you or how did you build on that?
It did, but it also studying other leaders and reading books. I mean, I definitely did all that stuff. I think that's important. I think the big thing is that although I maintained a calm appearance on the outside, in many cases I was not calm at all. Right? I
Yeah.
understood that, but I knew that I had to make sure my team understood that we had a handle on this. What you don't want to get in a situation of is, you know, letting the group let the group feel that they're leaderless, right? Because
Mhm.
then that's not a good scenario for anybody. So I think, you may not be calm inside, but you have to kind of sort it out and figure out, like, how do we maintain, stability through this turmoil that we're dealing with. And I
Mhm.
think that's important.
Yeah, and you said you looked up to other leaders. Is there anyone in particular that you really like their style in terms of remaining calm under pressure or remaining, not letting the team feel leaderless, like you said?
No, for sure. I was very fortunate. Bill McDermott, who is the CEO of ServiceNow, and he was on the board of directors at a company called Ansys, where I was a CRO. He was assigned to me as a mentor and was very instrumental in kind of my career. And if you look at Bill as a leader, he's leading one of the top 5 software companies in the world now. But he is, puts his people first, very charismatic, but he's also, very calm and understands, what it takes to kind of to build an organization that's going to be able to thrive in an environment like we're living in today. So,
Mm.
those are the type of folks I kind of looked up to. And I have several of those that I could point to. Michael George from Continuum is another one that I would point to.
Yes, love
As
Michael.
somebody, yeah, he was phenomenal and great leader, great under pressure,
Mhm.
always put his team and his people first and his customers first, and really understand how to build that really great team dynamic.
Yes, he was all about the genuine support and relationship building, and everyone just could feel it. That's how
Right.
the company it was the whole entire vibe of the company when we worked together was at his company. So yeah, those are great points as well. So I want to take just a couple minutes to highlight your book, your
Okay.
exciting new book. And so,
Mhm.
what was the inspiration behind wanting to write this now? And now you are retired. So, kind of
Yeah.
like this phase in life and what people can really take from it.
Yeah. So I really, it was a chance for me to give back to the tech community, the tech sales community that was so good to me in my career. And what it really inspired me to write it is that, I think it's designed for tech sellers. That's what the book's designed for, right? Um, but I think from a standpoint of how I did it isn't just about me. Although there's some stories. I have a story about my mother and page 12, 13, 14 around persistence. It's a great story. And I do that
Oh,
story in some of my speaking engagements. And there's some stories about myself, but the majority of the book, I interviewed 10 elite sellers from all across high tech, Europe, Asia, North America. And I really talked to them. They combined had won President's Club, which is kind of the pinnacle of success inside tech sales. They had won more than 150 President's Clubs, so averaging 15 or more. And
wow.
just to show, just to share how rare that is to win more than 10. I was at a conference last week in Denver, and I was speaking to a group, and about 500 people in the group. And I asked everybody to stand up who had won more than one President's Club, one or had won one President's Club, and a whole bunch of room stood up. I said, "Remain standing if you won five." 90% of the room sat down. I said, "Remain standing if you've won more than 10," and only two people were still standing. So it's rare to
Hmm.
to actually achieve that level
Yeah.
in book sales. It's very hard to do because you got to be disciplined, you got to be consistent. A lot of things can happen. So, it's not easy to do that. So, I interviewed those folks. Their insights are in the book. So, really, what I wanted to come out of it was what would be the blueprint for a seller who is either new in a tech sales or somebody who wants to raise their game to become elite? What's that blueprint that was left behind by all these great sellers that have done it before? And that's what I tried to achieve in the book. And I'm very proud of what we produced.
That's incredible just to leave your mark that way. And I love the concept of it's rare and but it's possible to get to that elite level. So here's what the top sellers did and just like kind
Right.
of clearly spelling it out and highlighting those inspiring people.
Yeah.
And I'm going to read the book, but just curious, like what are maybe just a couple qualities
Yeah.
because you said it's hard work. So these folks, like what ensures that they could actually win that many President's
Right.
Club?
So any interviews, one that was interesting was the big one that came out and they called it their superpower was curiosity. So the ability to stay
Yes.
curious with the customer, to really unpack what their pain was, to understand their personal wins, their professional wins, and really, understand that environment. That was a big one. The ability to be proactive was another big one. And another one I'll just add is the ability to service the client. So the elite sellers, they had their own reference accounts. They had people that were raving fans of theirs that were talking about how great they were and how great they serviced their accounts. So they were very, they had that, they had built that network of people that were championing them. So I think that was the
Mhm.
other one that I would share with the audience.
Cool. Yeah, and I like how you said that they had built that network of champions, right? So
Right.
just in terms of leaders in general, of teams that are trying to build that trust, what do you think is a question they should ask the teams to measure the trust between them and their teams?
Oh, that's a great it's a great question. I think, from a standpoint of measurement, like how do you measure trust? I think it's the ability for, it's a couple things, but it's the ability for the team to really execute at a high level. Now, how do you actually go in and measure that? I think a couple things. One is, you know, where are your people ending up that you're bringing you know, in the organization? Are they getting promoted? Are they achieving 100% of goal if you're running a sales team? Or are they if their NPS score is incredibly high, if they're running a service team, like how is a team actually performing both at a group level, but also individual level? And the people you bring in, where are they ending up in a company? One of the things I always talk about is that I'm very proud of is like all the people that I've hired over the years and how many people now are either CROs or VPs or directors. They moved up in the ranks, and it's like
Mhm.
it's well over 100, maybe close to 200 people now that are in those roles that have worked for me in my career. That's like one of the things I'm most proud of
That's
is
so cool.
because yeah, it's I think it's kind of a measurement of you're hiring great people. What are you doing to help them become successful and promote their careers in advance and all those kind of things. I think that is really important.
Yeah, and we know of some people mutually that I've actually worked with, and they spoke about your mentorship since early in their career. And so, like, that's just a good example. You said you've done that with like about 200 people, but it's hiring the strong person, but then remaining there as a mentor, right? And so, how do you try to do that while you're busy and working on so many things at a given time? How do you prioritize that type of mentorship?
No, yeah, I think well, I've always put at the top of my list. I talk to people a lot about managing what's urgent in your day to day versus doing the things that are important. So mentorship is
Yes.
important. But if you're a leader and you're consumed with the urgent, you can't get to the important, right? Because you're consumed.
Yes.
So you have to manage the urgent and keep that as a small percentage of your time allocation. And you have to focus on what's important, right? Which is difficult to do, in many cases. The other thing I would encourage is make sure that people generally, I hear this a lot like, well, so and so can't do this new role because they've never done it before. Well, at one point, none of us have ever done the role.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, you have to look for the soft skills, like their ability to learn. Are they curious? Or do they want to take more on? Like, there's all these things that can kind of happen. And I think people are sometimes very shallow in thinking people can do more. But the reality is, most people have the mental capacity and the ability to do much, much more. You have to give them the opportunity, and then what they'll do is
Right.
they'll thrive because they actually want to do more. They
Mhm.
want to elevate. They don't want to sit stagnant and just do what they've always done, right? So I think you have to be willing to open those doors for people that want them opened. Not everybody does, but the ones that want them opened, and then create that environment where you're going to allow them to, go conquer something new.
Yes, that's huge. And would you say you have that ability to really spot that in people and see like, oh, I see that soft skill. I want to give them a chance to grow that. And to like, is that something you've always been able to do well?
Yeah, I think it's a really, I don't know if I've always been able to do it well or not. I'm not sure. I mean, I think I do, right? But it's an example. I'll give you one great example. We had a great employee at Continuum, and we moved him to Australia, right?
Oh,
And
I know him.
remember, and like,
Yes.
I remember when I took him to dinner, and I said, "Would you like to move to Sydney and open up the business for us in Australia?" And he was very nervous, and not sure, but wow, he stepped up and did a great job, and,
Yeah.
ended up being such a great career move for him, and, but it was a very scary, right? I mean, things like that, but, like, we could have been like, "W we can't do that with that individual," right? But sometimes you need to give people chances. I mean,
Mhm.
that's how I was able to be successful, and other folks out there, that people gave me a chance, and then when I got the chance, I was able to do well.
Yes, that is so true. Like when you get that chance and then you can actually go for it on
You gotta
that
go for it.
level, that's a huge opportunity. So
Yeah.
that's nice that you got that and now you can give that to other people.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Cool. Well, I think I just have last question really just out of
Okay.
curiosity. Now you're retired, you kind of have ended this chapter. Um, we were kind of talking about this before we started, but what do you really want as next for you in this? How would you define this next chapter? What are some phrases that you think are fitting for this stage in your life?
Yeah, I think it's I'm gonna continue to coach and mentor people. I love that part of what I do, and, I continue to do that, as I go. I'm gonna continue to speak as long as people wanna hear me. Um, I'll continue to speak, and mostly on the book, but on other topics as well, if people have interest in my opinions. And I think just continue just to have fun. I mean, life's short. We're only here for a certain period of time, so just gotta go have fun, enjoy yourself, and, make the most of every moment and everything you're doing, and not get too serious about anything you're doing, or too serious about yourself. Just
Yeah.
just realize that we're built to have fun and smile, not to get too worked up
Yes.
over anything. So that would be my advice.
That's a hugely important point is what's the point of life if you're not having fun? You might as well enjoy it and laugh and not take
Right.
it so seriously all the time. So I'm all for that. And so where can people find your book and
So,
purchase?
thank you for that. I got a copy right here. So
Oh, there it
this
is.
one might
In all its
it's
glory.
on it's on Amazon, it's on Barnes& and Noble. The audio just came out, if you're
Oh,
interested in
great.
the audio. Um, it's also available on Kindle, and it's available internationally. I think Kindle is the most of the international one, but we also ship internationally. And then, uh, yeah, it's been really exciting. It was number 1 bestseller for sales,
Wow.
customer relations. I think four different categories. It hit number 1
Congratulations.
bestseller. So thank you. Yeah, it was
You
very
deserve that.
humbling for me. I didn't know how many we were going to sell, but we did really well, and the feedback, the reviews have been good. So I appreciate everybody who left a review as well.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm gonna get my copy, and I highly recommend. I'm so glad you could talk more so people get a sense of who you are as a person, the person I know. So that was my goal with this conversation. But
Well,
thank you
thank you
for
so
taking the
much.
time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the time today. It was awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.